What's up, SHPTube? I'm Nick Barros, and welcome to episode 1 of SHPETalk, where we talk about advice you've probably heard and we decide what we think about it. Today's piece of advice is fake it till you make it, and I invited our guest today, Dr. Samuel Garcia, an education specialist from NASA, to help me talk about this advice. I decided he'd be a great person to talk about it with because although fake it till you make it is usually pretty good advice, you can't fake it all the way to Mars. I hope you guys enjoy the interview. All right, everyone, please welcome Dr. Samuel Garcia. How are you doing today?
Nicolas, buenos dias. I'm doing great. Thank you very much for this invitation to connect with you and share a little bit about my work and life experiences with you and your group and team and colleagues.
Yeah, awesome. I'm super excited. All right, so let's start off. I just wanted to talk about how I met you at a leadership meeting one time, my freshman year. How was that?
That was a really cool experience. I didn't expect to be there that day, but Tomas, who used to be the president for SHPE, actually invited me to attend that meeting. So I was like, yeah, I'm there. Let's go hang out, listen to, the students do their thing and watch leadership in action. So, prior to that, I had the honor of meeting Tomas as they were attending the annual SHPE conference. I think it was in Arizona. Back in 2019 or so. So I met him in an airport, I think, when I was traveling back from Orlando to Austin. So I got to meet the SHPE team. They were wearing these awesome Miami Vice looking t-shirts, and I was like, hey, where are you guys from? What do you do? And they told me their story. We got connected, and then we just stayed in contact. So that brings me to our conversation today. But it began with just a hello. Hi, Samuel, Dr. Samuel Garcia. I work at Kennedy Space Center. I'm here to offer any support to you and your team. So, feel free to reach out to me.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I remember, I was, that leadership meeting was led by Tommy. So it was a lot of fun. It was great meeting you there. It was really cool because, my first semester, someone from NASA's already here, and it was really great getting to meet you. Talking about the theme of this episode, we're going to talk about the phrase fake it till you make it. We're going to talk about if we like the advice, when it applies, when it doesn't. But before we get completely into it, I wanted to talk about how did you get to the point that you are?
Wow, that's a great question. So I know that we're limited on time, but I'll fast forward through some of my stories. So I was born and raised in the Rio Grande Valley on the border of Texas, the deepest part of the state. So I grew up about 10 minutes away from the Mexico border. So I went to school there. I did my K through 12 schooling, but I also attended the local University of Texas Pan American. Now it's UT Rio Grande Valley. So I got my bachelor's degree. I went into teaching. I taught geography for 7 years at my alma mater. And then I pursued my master's and doctorate degree, which, eventually led me moving outside of the valley to San Marcos. And that was, a really unique experience. But, I was already married at the time. I had a small child. So it was a challenge. It was a challenge moving away from our family, moving away from the only place that we ever grew up in, worked in, lived in, moving away from our friends and colleagues. So, empezamos de nuevo. We started new again in a different environment, very different from what we were accustomed to and experienced. But, we forged a path. So, I just leveraged the support of my parents, of my grandparents, their blessings, their prayers, that helped sustain a lot of our time there in San Marcos. So, I've been very grateful to them. So I can't take all the credit because it's been a whole community that has been supporting me to get to where I'm at today. So needless to say, I went to school. I saw this position. I graduated with a doctorate degree also in education. And I saw this opportunity to be an educator, a NASA education specialist. So I applied, and thank God that, they accepted my application. They hired me. And then I've been, supporting NASA since 2017 in one way or another. So, it's been a great ride. It's been a great number of years. But of course, I owe, much of this journey to, my family and friends and teachers that have supported me along the way.
That's great. That's awesome. And, that's a really inspiring move to make from, living right on the border to coming into a big city. And that huge culture shock, that ties in great to the fake it till you make it. Do you feel like you had to kind of act like you fit in a little bit?
Oh, yes. I think there was a strong tendency to fit in. I mean, as you know, these doctor programs are very competitive. You had to apply, and we had to go in person, and now the application process was twofold. You had to fill out an application formally, but then they narrowed down the applicant pool or the cohort to about 20 individuals, and from there, or 25 individuals, and from there they only selected about 15. So I went through this process, and this was the first time I had ever been immersed in something like that at this level, right, with high stakes. And but yeah, I really had to adopt a different type of mentality because I knew that it was a competitive environment. It was something that I had not been exposed to or immersed in. So yeah, I had to rise to a certain level of standard and expectation. So that compelled me and pushed me to just develop a different mindset, enter with a different mentality, and a different presence in that space, because I knew if I were to be more introverted or a little more timid, then that those can be seen as negative qualities, right? But so in that experience early on in that program, I knew that I had to develop some areas of myself in order to be competitive, in order to be excel with other individuals who were very smart, very brilliant, but at the same time I wanted to stay true to who I was. So I didn't want to sell out myself just to fit in, right? And that's where there's a tension, is that of course you want to fit in, you want to be seen as equal and comparable to your colleagues, but not to the point where you sell yourself out and you don't bring your values, and you don't carry that integrity with you, right? So there's a fine line, and it's a dance, it's a delicate dance, and there are some instances where this can be applicable to each and every one of us, but it just depends on context, Nicolas. It depends on context and conditions, right? So I knew that this experience, required me to approach it in a different manner.
No, that's great, and it led you to where you are. You're obviously doing very, very great for yourself. As an aerospace engineer, whenever I tell my family back in Colombia that I'm an aerospace engineering major, they always call me up. They're like, "Oh, how's NASA doing?" Right?
So exactly. Then if I'm not right, it has fame, and you know what?
Mm-hmm.
That's so true, right? Because this identity, this narrative that you're creating will follow you everywhere you go. So now you become a mentor. You essentially become this institution for others, right? So I always try to be mindful, is that one of the thoughts that I always try to remind myself is that I'm representing a community, I'm representing an institution, much more than me, right? So that keeps me humble, that keeps me grounded, that keeps me on the ground with my feet firmly rooted on the ground. Because when you say you're an aerospace engineers, everybody's like, wow, that's amazing, and NASA and space and exploration. So that kind of can boost your ego, right? That's like an ego booster. But our job is to stay humble. Our job is to stay focused and disciplined and carry out our work in a very dignified manner, and be approachable and others, because that's important. Staying humble, being rooted, and that way you're able, other people see you as approachable, right? So you don't want to adopt like this whole different identity just to fit in or to be successful professionally, because your parents, your family members will call you out on it, right? They will say, "Oh, te crees mucho, quién eres," or whatever, right? So they keep you rooted, and I'm grateful for that, because achieving certain levels of success can, drive your ego and, impact your behavior and your actions and your attitude and mindsets. So I'm glad that you're, navigating this path and you're becoming, a mentor and a model for others to follow.
Yeah, well, that's the plan. You gotta just reel it in. Sometimes you can't let too much go to your head, obviously. And I'm just really happy to be here and to interview you. And I can't wait for the phone calls after, where my family, sees me interview someone from NASA, and they're like, "See, I knew it. I knew you were there the whole time." But yeah, so a lot of people may be wondering, what does your day-to-day job look like?
Yeah, so I mentioned that I'm an educator, so I work in the Office of STEM Engagement. So my day to day is, pretty much filled with developing, planning educational outreach activities. That's teacher workshops, speaking engagements, like the one with, like what I'm doing with you now, developing conference proposals, developing educational materials and resources for schools to use, and of course, there's communicating with my colleagues, working with other subject matter experts to put on webinars, to put on workshops for teachers. So my day-to-day is pretty much just planning, organizing, and supporting educational outreach events and activities for students, educators, and parents.
Awesome. And what are some projects you're working on right now?
One of the projects that I'm working on and supporting is NASA STEM Stars in Español. So this is a 30-minute live chat in which we interview people from across the agency, and we just want to showcase the diversity of talent, of individuals, but the diversity of professions that exist at NASA. So at NASA, engineers make up a large percentage of the workforce, but there are so many different types of employment possibilities for students, for young people at NASA. So we highlight those individuals, we talk to them, we get their stories, just kind of very similar to what you were doing now, and we learn from them, and we give students an opportunity to ask questions. So if they're interested in becoming a professional, and especially working within the NASA context, they have this opportunity to ask questions. So it's a really, really rich project that I help support. So I do the español version, which is fun, y así reconocemos la comunidad habla hispana at NASA. So it's a really cool experience. That's one project. Other projects that I'm working on are, of course, just right now putting on a virtual symposium for educators from the East and West Coast. So I'm in the process of developing an all-day virtual symposium where teachers can just connect, learn about NASA, and utilize some of the resources that NASA has for their students.
Wow, that's awesome. That's great. And back to the NASA STEM Stars, I watched those videos. I took a lot of inspiration from those for these. So I just wanted to talk to the Chef Familia. You guys should go check out those videos. Look up NASA STEM Stars on YouTube. They're great videos, super educational, and it's a great time. So, this is great. I just wanted to, wrap it up a little bit. We're getting to the time. So, a little bit of ending comments. Let's talk about the phrase, fake it till you make it, our theme for the day. What are your thoughts? I just want to throw it generally to you.
So reflecting on this, I think there is certain truth to it. I think it can come in handy. It can be an advantage sometimes, especially where instances when I'm thinking as a young student, for example, in engineering, there are certain skill sets that you need to be successful as an engineer, as a professional. So reassessing ourselves, reassessing those areas of growth and development can help us target those areas and work on those areas. So for example, engineering is you must work in teams. You must be a great communicator, a great team player. You might have to work on those interpersonal skills. So, if you're more of the introverted kind, then you really need to work on those abilities, right? And help strengthen them. So that way you're able to have the tools to be successful and reach your own goals, right? So that's just like one example that I can think of right now, is that, sometimes there are certain areas that we need to develop, and, and we need to practice those areas for us to grow and to be successful. But like I mentioned before, Nicolas, it's a fine line, right? You don't want to do too much because then people can see right through you, right? You don't want to put on this facade, this fakeness, where you're drained emotionally, spiritually, physically, because you're just putting on a facade. But the point is to really just identify areas of growth, be strategic about it, and find those opportunities for you to work on those areas, right? So just keeping that in mind, it can be beneficial. And then also, there's certain research that says, well, if you're an individual who struggles with anxiety or depression, smiling more often can help you feel better, right? So sometimes just putting on a smile can help change things, right? So sometimes there are instances where, life happens, we're, caught in rough moments, but our job is to not let those negative feelings impact us when we go into the workplace, right? Because sometimes, you got to work, you got to be cordial, you got to be respectful to people, and sometimes, we might not be feeling well inside. So we got to muster up the courage and smile and be cordial to people when we don't have, the energy to do that. But by doing that, we're able to get ourselves like to a better place. So yes, there are instances where it can be beneficial, but those are very strategic points in time that can help you or help anybody, overcome certain situations.
Right. Awesome. Great. Thank you so much for coming. Thanks for the great advice. To wrap this up, let's ask a question from the crowd. The question that I really enjoyed was this one submitted to us. It's, what can I do right now to ensure success?
Wow. That's what can you do right now? I think right now, what you can do to ensure success on a personal level is to write down goals, like goal setting. I think being intentional of what you want to do, being intentional of what you want to achieve, is really important. So really reflect on what is it that you want and write down, those goals, and then start thinking about what's going to get me to achieve those goals, right? So that's one way that you can make manifest your success in the present, right? And then identify like who can help me achieve these goals, right? So essentially you're developing a plan of action. So as an engineering student, you're taught and trained to think this very strategically, and conceptualize certain things, and therefore, your success is linked to your own, to the way you conceptualize your own progress and pathway, right? So one thing that we can all do, right now is just sit down, reflect, and write down some of the things that you want to achieve, and then write down ways that you can achieve those goals and who can help you achieve those goals as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much for this great advice. Thank you for coming. I'm really excited to keep on working with you in the future.
That's right. So, Nicolas, thank you very much for this invitation. I know that young people are doing fantastic things, and just wanted to share with the young people before we're done is that your presence here matters. You have a purpose, you have a destiny, you have a mission, and you have a whole community that you're representing. So we're proud of you. We're cheering you on. Te estamos apoyando, creemos en ti, and you're gonna make this world a better place. So that's the kind of the spirit that we want to do our work within, is that our presence matters, and everything we'll do can help leave a lasting impact for generations to come.
Awesome. Thank you. That's amazing advice. Great closing comments. Let's end it here. All right. Nice to see you. All right. Again, thank you so much to Dr. Samuel Garcia, and we hope to see you by SHPE soon. If you'd like your question featured in the next SHPETalk video, I've linked a Google form below where you can submit your question and give us advice on what you want to see on the channel. Adios, familia. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.